It's time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Right now, and great to have you with us on this Monday edition of the show. We got a lot to do over the next 60 minutes. Sam Yarnell with the day off, so it's me riding solo, but not totally alone. Bill Bender will drop by in about 20 minutes. Does a great job at the Sporting News. We'll get his thoughts on all things college football. Big weekend of news. James Franklin out as the head coach at Penn State. We'll get into the who, what, where, why in that conversation. We'll also talk about some of the big games from the weekend that was in Week 7 of the college football season. We'll also be joined by our friend Brian Twining from Bleacher Nation, who does a great job on NASCAR. What a race in Las Vegas right here over the weekend on Sunday with Denny Hamlin winning the South Point 400 and obviously stamping his mark in the Final Four for the NASCAR Playoffs. All of that plus odds and ends on this Monday edition of the show. But we start things out in the NFL, and I mean, look, the Kansas City Chiefs, everybody had them dead and buried. I didn't, because if you've listened to this show, you know that I have felt strongly about the fact that in a wide open season in this league, and that is still the overarching theme right now in the NFL. Oh, you got all these one-loss teams and 6 one-loss teams, 5 one-loss teams now after the Lions lost last night. That even with all these one-loss teams, you have no undefeated teams, which it seems really early in the season for us to be having the conversation that we're already through all the talk of an undefeated season for somebody. The level of parity that has arrived in the NFL, where it just literally feels like anybody could win this thing if you get into the playoffs. Would you really count out Kansas City at 3-3, especially with what this offense has looked like the last 2 weeks as they start to get pieces back? And as Patrick Mahomes starts to get more comfortable with this sort of reconfigured offensive line. And they were talking about it on the broadcast on NBC last night as Kansas City took care of Detroit. They were talking about the fact that he had some PTSD of sorts from what had happened over the last couple of years and having to run for his life. And that he's finally getting more comfortable and more acclimated to the offensive line as it currently sits there in Kansas City. And the Chiefs are starting to slowly get their swagger back, and they're 3-3. And again, in a wide open AFC right now, are you really going to count out Kansas City? I'll tell you right now, if you forced me to say who goes deeper right now in the postseason, Kansas City or Denver, I'll take Kansas City. I know that sounds nuts, but Denver's only got one loss. Denver almost lost to the Jets yesterday when the Jets had 82 total yards in the game. We'll get to that in a second, though. Move away from... And by the way, Detroit's going to be fine, too. I'm not worried about the Lions. They're banged up. And if that game is played with everybody healthy last night, I'm not even so sure Kansas City wins, because I still am that big a believer in the Lions. Lions are going to be fine. Tampa Bay, another one of those one-loss teams. The one loss coming at Philadelphia, that crazy game earlier in the season. Tampa Bay wins again. You're getting the Baker Mayfield MVP conversation, which we're going to continue to hear that drumbeat because it's somebody different in the great reclamation project that has been Baker Mayfield here over the last few years, culminating in this continued rise of Tampa Bay. Who gets the win yesterday against the 49ers. Look, this is as much about the 49ers, though, and the fact that these injuries at some point are going to catch up with this football team. Kyle Shanahan's done a phenomenal job, but you simply cannot, week in and week out, continue to win in the NFL with a MASH unit and just plugging in pieces and putting things together. As good as Kyle Shanahan is, as good as... Robert Saleh is as a defensive coordinator. At some point, these injuries are going to catch up with you, and they have with the Niners. Doesn't mean I don't think they still win the division or go to the playoffs or anything like that. And you know, Mac Jones throws the pick late. Ultimately, I want to see what this team looks like when it gets some of these components back in place, namely Brock Purdy. who still has to get back. And I think we could kind of put to sleep this idea of Mac Jones supplanting Brock Purdy as the starting quarterback, as long as Brock Purdy returns and can be the Brock Purdy that the Niners need him to be. Let's talk about the Broncos and Jets from yesterday. Can't wait for just a moment here. I got up at 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, to watch the Broncos and the Jets yesterday from London's Tottenham Stadium. God, do I regret that decision. I wish I could have just slept the extra 3 hours rather than watching that slop, that mess. And my buddy Nick Ferguson, maybe he was being tongue-in-cheek, said, no, it wasn't an offensive disaster. It was a defensive masterpiece. That was an offensive disaster. In fact, it wasn't offensive. It was offensive, what we saw from the Jets in that game. They had minus 10 passing yards for Justin Fields. That's not even possible. It was like the one time when I was working in radio in Hartford and the first ratings book came in after I had just started like 3 months prior, and it said I had a negative 0.1 rating. And I'm like, wait, it's not possible to have a negative rating. If people aren't listening, it's just a 0. No, it was a negative. People were actually regurgitating you out. They hated you so much. That was Justin Fields yesterday. He had minus 10 yards. The Jets had 82 total yards as a team, and the Broncos still barely beat them, which just goes to my point about the fact that I'm still not buying in on the Broncos, even with one loss, even though they went into Philadelphia and beat the cheesesteakers known as the Philadelphia Eagles. I still can't get behind this idea that the Broncos are the team to beat in the AFC West. I don't buy it. And guess what? They still have to play the Chiefs twice. Maybe I should have gone twice. They still got to play the Chiefs twice. But the question is the Jets. Are they going to win a game this year? And I know people are, no, you can't say that. They're only 0-6 or 17 games this season. That team is so bad, they may not win a game. And before you tell me, well, but their defense alone will get them a win. How much longer do you think it is before that defense gives up on the season? And that's where it could get really scary for the Jets. What happens if that defense just says, my God, we got an offense that's putting up 82 yards. And I know it's pride in your job, pride in what you do for a living. You make a lot of money. At some point, this is going to mentally crush this team. It's already crushing the fan base. We'll get to the baseball, playoff baseball, next on SportsWrap. Thanks for being with us. Coming up in 10 minutes, it's Bill Bender of the Sporting News, who does a terrific job on college football. We'll get some thoughts with him on the firing of James Franklin. And I want to ask him a question that I posited to our friend Nick Ferguson when we were texting yesterday back and forth. Nick, who joins the show, former NFL safety who hangs out with us quite a bit during football season, where I said to Nick, I'm like, if this is the NFL, would this firing be so crazy? Because if the answer is no, it wouldn't be crazy, then I don't know why it's crazy in college football to fire the head coach of a prominent program that just lost 3 in a row when the expectation was a national championship. And they haven't beaten anybody, over the last several years. His record against top 20 or top 10 opponents. So I don't know why it's so crazy to fire James Franklin. And by the way, before you give me oh my God, he's got a family. He's getting a $49 million buyout. Shut up. That's as honest as I can be with you. Jason just told me to shut up. If you're complaining about James Franklin and his $49 million buyout, yeah, you're missing the boat on this one. But let's talk baseball, because there was plenty. I mean, from the time we left the air Friday to where we are now, in this wild MLB postseason. And can we just say it? I mean, I know this is going to be one of those hyperbolic statements, but I can't recall a post. And I'm a Yankee fan, so I'm crushed right now. I don't know why I'm crushed. I should have expected it, because I'm the one who's been predicting sort of the demise of this team all year. But I have been blown away by how good this MLB postseason has been. Like, if you're not watching baseball right now as a sports fan, maybe you're just a general sports fan, a parachute in for certain things. If you're missing this baseball postseason, man, I feel bad for you. I mean, with what we had between the Tigers on Friday night with the Tigers and Mariners going 15 innings before Jorge Polanco, there's a theme here, drives home the game-winning run in the 15th inning. Although I do have to say about that game on Friday, before we get to this ALCS, which got started last night, I mean, could somebody like drop down a bunt with a runner on second and nobody out? Could somebody just figure out a way to move a runner over so the team has to bring the infield in so that this game doesn't go 15 innings? I'm all for it. I love the drama, edge of your seat stuff. And again, I don't have a dog in the fight or a horse in the race, so to speak. But could somebody just figure out a way to get a runner? Both of these teams had so many opportunities. The Tigers are going to be kicking themselves throughout this entire offseason because they could be playing in this ALCS right now against Toronto. But I don't think they give Toronto the battle that the Mariners are. And we saw that in game one of this series, where George Springer comes out, much like Toronto did to the Yankees in the ALDS. And Toronto punches him in the mouth. First pitch, George Springer, boom, gone, home run. And then the Mariners come right back. And the Mariners continue to find ways throughout this series. Cal Raleigh hitting a home run, doing what stars are supposed to do in the postseason, and that is not a jab or a shot at anyone. He just continues to perform while playing the toughest position in the sport, arguably, where you're expected to do so much behind the plate, so mentally engaged in the game, so physically demanding on your, in the crouch the entire game. I mean, Cal Raleigh played 15 innings on Friday and was behind home plate for all 15 of those innings and the 7,000 pitches he had to see. And then he comes back 2 days later, hits a home run. And then Jorge Polanco, who continues to do, I mean, just amazing stuff in this postseason. Captain Clutch, Jorge Polanco. Continues to drive in runs, drives into the go-ahead run and then the tack-on run for the Mariners to get the 3-1 win. We'll see what happens in Game 2 on Monday. We'll have a full recap on tomorrow's show. Cameron Maben will be on the show this week as well, former World Series winner. It'll be fun to get some thoughts with him. And then there's the Brewers, who were able to fend off a challenge from the Cubs. I mean, you had the Brewers win the first 2 games of the series. Cubs come back, win 2 at Wrigley. They get to a Game 5, and then the Cubs offense stalls? Sound like I'm from New York. I am, a little bit. And the Brewers get to this ALCS where you really have this David and Goliath matchup. I don't care what the records were during the regular season. When you look at the payrolls, when you look at the history, when you look at the disappointment that the Brewers have suffered, while the Dodgers won a World Series last year and have won a couple with Dave Roberts now. It is going to be a fascinating dynamic between these two teams. Hopefully for 7 games. I hope it goes a long way because this postseason has been filled with long series, whether it be best of 3 or best of 5, and now best of 7. And look, this is a different Brewers team. This is not your grandfather's Brewers that get to the playoffs and disappoint and can't find the big hit and choke games away late. This Brewers team that, different guys are doing it. Bryce Terang. Somewhere back there? Oh, I had a baseball card of him somewhere. Bryce Terang hitting a home run in this game after his bat basically going dormant throughout this entire postseason. And then you have the Dodgers, who, if not for an Orion Kerkeren error, would have been facing a Game 5 with the Philadelphia Phillies after winning the first 2 games of the series. And Sam and I have talked about it at great length, this idea of whether or not the Dodgers are inevitable. Are they Thanos? For those of you that are Marvel fans. Are they inevitable when it comes to potentially winning a World Series? I say the answer is no. There are flaws in this team. You can get to this bullpen. and Dave Roberts' sort of use of said bullpen and some of his decision making has come under fire. And that'll be something that's very interesting, worth watching against Pat Murphy, who's just sort of the everyman. He talks about his team being the average Joes. Oh, they're a little better than average Joes after they win Game 5, he says. It is going to be fascinating to watch. While I feel like the Mariners and the Blue Jays, in two franchises that, one has never been to the World Series and the other hasn't been back in a very long time. While that is interesting on a different level, this Brewers-Dodgers thing is the ultimate David and Goliath. And, of course, there's the whole Bob Uecker narrative and sort of undercurrent that's sitting there with the late, great announcer for the Brewers as well. All right, we're going to come back. We're going to do some college football with Bill Bender next. Welcome back to this Monday edition of the show. Let's shift gears and talk college football. I was headed out yesterday to go cover the NASCAR race here in Las Vegas. It's the only major sporting event I've gone to since I moved here a year ago. And the news broke that James Franklin had been fired. And only about an hour or so earlier had I gotten a text message from this guy, our friend Bill Bender, who does a great job with the sporting news on all things football. And we were talking about doing the show today, and we were bouncing around back and forth whether or not James Franklin would still be the head coach of Penn State. And lo and behold, Bill Bender, James Franklin's no longer the coach at Penn State. On a scale of 1 to 10, with the 10 being the most shocked, how shocked are you that they pulled this in the middle of the season?
6, 7, as the kids like to say. Unfortunately, my kids say this all the time, a 6 or a 7. I'm shocked about the buyout part, that we have a $49 million buyout and you're willing to move on. And, we've talked about the risk factors here. On one hand, yeah, it's been disaster hour all for the last 3 weeks, disaster 3 weeks specifically. But I think they made an emotional decision here. And unless they have the guy lined up, and the two most popular names are Curt Cignetti and Matt Rule, there's a risk. You had 10 wins each of the last 3 seasons. You were in a tie game with 5 minutes left in the college football playoff semifinals last season. So, this next guy better be good.
If you're Cignetti and you're looking at everything that just happened to James Franklin, and now the changing landscape of college football where you may not get as much time if you're not successful. Because let's be honest, it's become like pro football. We have seen so many coaching firings in season already this year, and we're already, we're only through week 7, and we've already seen all these firings. I know it's Indiana versus Penn State, and your knee-jerk reaction would be to say, well, of course you take that job if you're Curt Cignetti. But is it a foregone conclusion that he would?
No. And here's a couple reasons why. He is revered in Indiana. He's doing things this year that Penn State should have been doing. He's got guys up front. The expectation changes. There was a key phrase in Patrick Kraft's statement that hit me. National powerhouse. That's what he called Penn State. They're not a national powerhouse. They haven't won a national title in 40 years. They've only won 4 Big Ten championships since joining the conference since 94. They're not quite, they don't have the trophy case that Michigan and Ohio State do. So the guy that comes in is going to be expected to do that. I don't even think Michigan's on the same level as Ohio State program-wise on a national powerhouse level. You know what I mean? So that next guy, and if I'm Curt Cignetti, I'm thinking I'm 63. I could coach here for 10 years. They are the best matchup for Ohio State this year. They proved that last weekend over at Oregon.
What happens for Franklin after this? How damaged is he from this experience when you talk about what's next for him?
Oh, he'll find if he wants to continue coaching. He's a good coach. There's no doubt.
He's pretty young. I would imagine he'd still want to continue coaching.
Yeah, he'll find somewhere. A lot of people are drawing the connection to North Carolina. A guy like James Franklin would be a home run for North Carolina because, one, he could clean up a mess, which he did at Penn State when he got there. He was, after OB, Bill O'Brien, he was definitely the next guy to help clean up that mess. I think he could compete in that conference, and there'd be less pressure in these top 10 spotlight games, which, let's be honest, yes, he was 4-21, but Penn State wasn't favored in the majority of those losses.
I was arguing this with my friend Nick Ferguson yesterday, who comes on the show. And I said, because he thought this was a dumb move by Penn State. And I said, well, look, I mean, if this were the NFL, would we be calling this a dumb move to fire James Franklin? Because if it's not a dumb move in the NFL, I don't know why it's a dumb move in college football when they are essentially one and the same now with the expectation levels that come with the fact that players get paid, that some of these larger schools are supposed to obviously excel more because of the resources they have, much like large market teams in professional sports. Do you agree with that idea?
I think in terms of if you are, again, national powerhouse, that would be the equivalent of a quality organization in the NFL. And what do the quality organizations do? Pittsburgh, they don't fire Mike Tomlin. Nick Sirianni, I know there was hot seat talk last year, but if Philadelphia gets bounced in the wild card, they're not firing him. Tomlin's missed the playoffs. John Harbaugh is going to miss the playoffs this year, probably in Baltimore. I complain constantly about Matt LaFleur as a Green Bay fan, but the guy wins a lot of football games. So if you're a quality organization, I am a fan of stability. I was pointed out this week, though, that Georgia did move on from Mark Richt, and I probably wrote, why did they do that? And they got Kirby Smart. So that's what they're chasing right now, the guy that can take the next step. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, I don't know if it's the wrong move, but it is a very risky move, and they better be right.
Am I wrong in pointing out all these coaching firings that it does feel like there are more this year than we've seen in season?
Oh, there's already been more Power 4 firings than there were. Okay,
so it's not my imagination that this is happening.
No, you're not. You're good. I think the Power 4, there's going to be a lot more, and part of it was we were figuring out the first couple of years of NIL, what can you do, what can't you do. But yeah, I mean, we already have multiple openings in we have multiple openings in the Big Ten with Deshaun Foster and James Franklin. We have five or six Power 5 coaches now, and I would anticipate more.
Would Bill Belichick be one? Do you think he makes it through the season at this point with all the smoke we heard last week, with all the smoke we saw last week?
I think he'll get through the season, and it'll be a one and done. I think they'll find a way to PR this. If they fire him now, you're admitting that, man, we screwed up.
Oh, but wait a second. If you fire him at the end of the season, it isn't much better. You're still admitting you screwed up.
You are, but I think you're at least getting the players through the season. And you know what? Like, the defensive coordinator's gone. It's his son. Which coaches are staying? I think they just need to put as many Band-Aids on it, get Belichick to a studio job, because I don't think he's going back to the NFL, and go after, quite frankly. James Franklin would be a perfect fit down there, I think. And a couple other jobs you were mentioning, keep an eye on Wisconsin with Luke Fickell. I mean, they just got hammered by Iowa, and the Buckeyes are coming to town this week.
We're chatting with Bill Bender of the Sporting News. He does a terrific job on all things college football. We have bolted him to the chair because there are actual games I want to talk about from this weekend, aside from the latest coaching firing in college football. The head coach at Oregon State got canned too this weekend after an 0-7 start. Bill Bender's hanging out with us. Don't go anywhere. Lots more to do on a Monday Sports Wrap. Coming up in 10 minutes, a wild NASCAR race in Las Vegas yesterday, which I was there to watch. Our friend Brian Twining was there from Bleacher Nation. He will join us coming up in 10 minutes to recap Denny Hamlin's latest win. He had the pole, and he won the race. But first, more of our conversation with the great Bill Bender, who does a terrific job with the Sporting News on all things football and hangs out with us on Mondays. All right, let's go through some of the games and start with Alabama and Missouri. Apparently, reports of Kalen DeBoer's demise are greatly exaggerated, Bill.
Yeah, and I think they're going to keep it rolling against Tennessee this weekend. Jam Miller is the status to watch. That concussion was a nasty hit he took, but Ty Simpson's good. He's not just good; he's fantastic. He keeps the game under control. I think that game manager label gets a negative stereotype, but he's a good player. And to go on that road environment, that was a very good Missouri defense that came into the weekend allowing fewer first downs than any other team in the FBS. So total control and clutch fourth down pass at the goal line. They made the plays when they had to on the road, and that's what you have to do in the SEC.
But again, it just speaks to what we were just talking about in the last segment about patience, because everybody was ready to run Kalen DeBoer out of town. And I may have even been part of that conversation. For this team to respond the way it has off that opening loss, it speaks volumes. Yeah,
and they're one of three teams that I would like to see play Ohio State down the line. The other being Miami, and we will probably get to see Indiana and Ohio State play in the Big Ten championship game. So it does. And, Kalen DeBoer, I think one thing Alabama fans are getting used to is the demeanor. He's not a Nick Saban, throw the headset, kick something, chew somebody out on the sideline type guy. He's chill. And you can't complain about the results now. Heading into this Tennessee matchup, they're very good at home, and they've kind of dispelled this road narrative. They're a very dangerous team.
Yes, they are. Texas, look, you and I have had this conversation ad nauseum about the Longhorns and Arch Manning. It cannot be understated, though, what that win against Oklahoma on Saturday meant for that team.
Yeah, Arch waved goodbye to the Oklahoma fans. He should have waved at every critic he had last week. At Sporting News, I talked to Kirk Bowles.
I was one of them.
Hey, I was the other way, right? Like, I was the play it out guy. And I talked to Houston Chronicle columnist Kirk Bowles about it last week. And, just let him play. It's going to be a process. He might not be. I still think he's NFL quarterback, and he'll be a very good one when it's all said and done.
Is it a bit of the Shedeur? Are we treating him a bit like Shedeur Sanders in that we're putting under the microscope all the failings just because of the Manning name? Are we guilty of that?
Oh, we're guilty of both, though. We're guilty of overhype, and we're guilty of tearing down. And because of just like Shedeur, who I liked a lot, by the way, and I still think should be starting for the Cleveland Browns right now, just to see what we have in terms of his ability. I like Arch. I think obviously the offensive line has been rough, but that Red River game has a way of flipping narratives. I'm not sure John Mateer should have played. And I get why he did. He's a Texas kid. I understand all that. But it was clear that his mobility was limited because they didn't want him taking too many shots on the hand. And Arch, with a running game, which they got, the results were much better. He was fantastic in the third quarter.
With a healthy Mateer, do they win that game?
Probably.
Yeah.
I think, but they turned it over 3 times. And what we forgot is Texas is pretty salty on defense too. And that game, it is always unpredictable. But for Texas, the trick now is you got to go play Kentucky. You got to go play Mississippi State. They do have Georgia coming down the line. And we'll see if we know the difference between clapping and a timeout at that point. But that's going to be a huge game for the Longhorns if they want to slip into the playoff.
Quick thoughts on Ohio State and what they did at Illinois.
Their defense is ridiculous.
That's what I keep pointing to. That's why when you say I want to see Alabama, I don't know if it matters who they play.
6.8 points per game through 6 weeks. Arvell Reese, you can run down 4 or 5 first-round picks on that unit. Illinois got him a little bit with tempo because I do like Luke Altmaier, but the Buckeyes are a cut above everybody else right now. Not saying they're untouchable, but they are clearly the best team in the country.
Last one, and it has to be Indiana, doing what they did. We talked about Kurt Cignetti, going into Oregon and beating the Ducks. And look, every year the Ducks have one of these losses that we wind up inevitably pointing to as a reason why they don't reach their full potential. Although now with a playoff, it's obviously a little different, and there will still be opportunities for them. But thoughts on Indiana and this momentous win for this program?
They're really good up front. And I know that's that's an easy thing about a complicated place on the football field, but their run defense is nasty. They create chaos on that side of the ball, and they prove that they were the more physical team in a tough road environment, and they take a cue off their coach. I mean, not since Hasn't been that. I make this comparison a little bit. He's kind of like Bob Knight in a different way, not the same kind of domineering guy, but he drives people crazy like Bob Knight did. And what's driving people crazy right now is that Indiana wins.
We've only got about 45 seconds here, but I got to ask you. I mean, we're through the first 7 weeks of the college football season. Getting down to 4 teams is going to be really difficult as of right now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of mess. There's, I believe, 8 unbeaten teams left in the Power 4, a ton of 1-loss teams, and a ton of 2-loss teams. It's been fun. That SEC carnage is going to be a lot of fun to watch. But, week 8, we're getting right to it, Jason. There's 4 or 5 matchups with ranked teams.
But are there
fun to sort out.
But are there enough of those matchups? And I need to be real quick. Are there enough of those matchups between now and the end of the year that it's going to solidify who those 4 teams should be? And I would argue it is not.
No, we're going to have a lot of tiebreaker math.
It's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of pissed off fan bases. That's all I know. Bill Bender of the Sporting News, appreciate you, my friend. We'll see you next week.
Hey, I appreciate it.
Welcome back. Odds and Ends wraps it up in 10 minutes with another college football firing that we didn't get to earlier in the show, but one that is notable nonetheless, and paying homage to what might be the most successful franchise in all of professional sports. That's coming up as well. But if it's a Monday on this show, we generally make sure to get this guy in. Brian Twining does a great job with NASCAR, with Bleacher Nation, catches work over there. And my go-to guy on Mondays on this show to recap everything we missed when it comes to NASCAR, which sometimes we do miss. Sometimes we don't get to watch the race. But then there's times like yesterday where I actually went to the race and got to see Brian in person for a change, as we were out there at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway for the South Point 400, where Denny Hamlin is your winner. Brian Twining, he had been on the pole for this race. And he winds up winning it despite sort of an up and down day and a wild day out there at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And for full transparency here, I went to the race. Brian was at the race. But I told Brian in advance, I'm probably going to leave the race early because we had the dog at the sitter and I could find out, I can catch up on what happens later. I went there to get a lot of social media content for the show, which we did successfully. And you'll see later in the week on our Friday, we're going to have a special edition of SportsWrap because I'm going to be traveling, and we'll have some great content that we captured while we were out there at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And Brian was actually a small part of that as well. But Brian, Denny Hamlin wins. There were a bunch of wrecks in this race late. Ryan Blaney was probably the biggest loser if Denny Hamlin was the biggest winner of this week's race. But talk about Hamlin and this win on Sunday at Las Vegas Motor Speedway.
Yeah, the significance goes beyond him locking into the playoffs or the fact that it's the 60th win in his career, becoming only the 10th guy in the sport to do that. He also ties Kevin Harvick for the most wins in a career. He became the all-time winningest driver for Toyota, which is, something that is just another feather in his cap. It put Toyota in the championship 4, marking or completing the fact that they are now the only manufacturer to have a participant in the championship 4 under this current format. Like, yesterday was a massive win for everybody. Oh yeah, and it's also the first winner from the pole at Las Vegas Motor Speedway.
Wow. That is remarkable. Yeah. And he punches his ticket, obviously, as you mentioned, for the Final Four, for the championship, for NASCAR. Talk about Ryan Blaney, though, because he has put himself behind the 8 ball here. He had a tire that basically blew out, it looked like, slammed into the wall. It ended his day very early in this race, within the first 60 or 70 laps. He was out of the race. And now he finds himself in a position where he's going to have to win in order to get in. It's not something that's unbeknownst to him, though, or uncommon for him.
Yeah, if there's anybody in the round of 8 that can overcome an obstacle like this, it's Ryan Blaney, who is amongst the elite at Talladega. And, he's the back-to-back fall Martinsville race winner already. So I'm not too worried about the 12 team.
Who else was a big loser out of yesterday, given what took place? William Byron.
I was just going to say, I feel like the biggest loser is William Byron, who, yes, he's won at Daytona. Talladega is a little bit of a different animal, and he hasn't been the best at Martinsville the last couple of years under pressure, which he's going to be this year as well.
And I pointed to him as a potential winner yesterday, and then literally as I'm walking out of the race, I watch him wreck. Did we get an explanation after the race as to how or why that happened? Because it seemed like he was somebody was diving down to go towards the pits. Maybe it was him, and he just slammed right into the car that was in front of him, which ended his day and caused this big wreck, which brought other drivers back into the race. But does anybody know what happened there?
I would venture to guess it's just a monumental miscommunication between spotters up on the spotter stand, because Ty Dillon's team was saying that they alerted the 24 camp that he was pitting, yet the 24 camp said they had no indication. Ty Dillon didn't give the, I guess you could say, courtesy wave out the window to William, saying like, hey, I'm coming down the pit road. And from the perspective of pretty much everybody, fans, and I know for sure in the media center, he was a lane or two too high while trying to enter pit road. So this is definitely the 10's fault. William Byron was just running his line, and on his radio they said he's probably going to be running lane 2 or 3, so stay on the bottom, which is what William did.
Before we go, a quick thought on Kyle Larson.
He's still dangerous, but again, Denny Hamlin, 1v1 against the 11. Kyle Larson simply cannot beat the old man.
And there's been, not for nothing, it was Shane Van Gisbergen, last week. There's been a few 1v1s here where Kyle Larson, when you would expect Kyle Larson to be the one to come out on top, where he hasn't recently, and it kind of leaves you scratching your head a little bit.
It is interesting. I think Larson definitely has that dog in him, I guess you would say, about trying to win races, but these other guys, they're just a little bit more aggressive, I guess, at this point in time in the season.
Before we go, a quick thought on Talladega.
Buckle your seatbelts, because there's a lot of people that are in must-win situations, and we're probably going to get utter chaos in the last 20 or so laps.
Yeah, that sounds about right for Talladega. Well, listen, it was fun seeing you out here yesterday. It's always good. And don't get me wrong, I like talking to you on a Zoom and just having you in a box, and I could box you in there, and it's great. But it's much, much better to get to see you in person. We had dinner on Friday night. I enjoyed that, and loved having you out here in Las Vegas. Hopefully we get to do it again soon. Thanks for coming on, as always.
Yeah, of course. Take it easy.
All right, we got a lot more to do on the show. Don't go anywhere. Odds and Ends wraps it up in a couple of minutes with some thoughts on the WNBA's Las Vegas Aces. Also, another firing in college football we didn't get to earlier. That's next. All right, just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Monday. Sam returns tomorrow. He's off again Wednesday, but he'll be back for tomorrow's show. As I said, we got a lot of guests this week joining us. Not sure what we're doing tomorrow yet, but Cameron Maben's going to be on the show this week. Jordan Schultz of Fox Sports is dropping by the program. Of course, David Ardsman, his usual baseball spot. So a lot to do on the program this week. Couple of reminders before we go. If you have not done so yet, make sure to subscribe to the Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast. It's available on all your favorite podcasting platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon. Anywhere you get a podcast, you can listen to this show Monday through Friday, crystal clear audio, 45 minutes commercial free. It is fantastic. You can listen to it while you're on the way to work. It plays just as well as an audio podcast as it does a television show. Speaking of television, we're on over 270 affiliates nationwide. Maybe you don't have time to watch us on one of those affiliates, or maybe we're not in your city yet. If that is the case, make sure to subscribe to the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. You can watch the show Monday through Friday right there on YouTube, commercial free, 45 minutes again. It is fantastic. And in addition to being able to watch the show on our YouTube channel, we have Sports Wrap Shorts, which is fantastic. Sometimes it's clips from the show, but oftentimes it's not. because news sometimes breaks after we finish putting the show together every morning out here on the West Coast. So you want to subscribe to SportsWrap Shorts because it's SportsWrap and a nice little bow, quick hitters on the top stories as they break throughout the day, in addition to being able to watch us talk about them here. SportsWrap Shorts available on our YouTube channel. And without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, time for some odds and ends. One more note from college football, and we'll get to it here in odds and ends. You may recognize that man. May have remembered seeing him on TV for all those years talking about football. You might remember him winning a Super Bowl as an NFL quarterback. That's Trent Dilfer. Maybe you didn't realize he had been at UAB the last couple of years. It would be easy to forget with a 9-21 record in 2+ seasons for UAB. But the former Super Bowl winning quarterback is out of a job after a 53-33 loss at Florida Atlantic. Third straight loss for the Blazers. They are now 2-4 on the season, and the person that ultimately pays for that is one Trent Dilfer. Interestingly enough, Alex Mortensen, the son of the late, great NFL insider Chris Mortensen, is going to actually serve as the interim head coach for the remainder of the season. I would expect you to see Trent Dilfer back in the broadcast booth at some point, but we'll have to wait and see. But it didn't go very well for him as a head coach over there at UAB. Odds and ends. Save the best for last, because let's say it right now, the Las Vegas Aces might be the best organization in all of professional sports. You heard me right. And I know some people might want to say, well, what about the Florida Panthers? They're on the verge of winning a third straight Stanley Cup. Well, if you listen to our friend Dennis Bernstein, who joined the show last week to preview the the NHL season, you may have heard him say it's going to be really difficult for a three-peat for the Panthers, given up with some of the pieces that they lost after their back-to-back Stanley Cup titles. Still, they would have to be in the conversation. And certainly the Kansas City Chiefs could be in the conversation with all the Super Bowls they've won. And if you go into baseball, the Dodgers with another opportunity to win a World Series. But with 3 of the last 4 years having yielded WNBA championships for the Las Vegas Aces, and for all the crap we like to give Mark Davis as the owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, and we kind of know the dumpster fire that the Raiders have been, no matter what city they've been in over the last couple of decades. The fact that the Las Vegas Aces are champions yet again, and again, it cannot be understated just how bad this team was through basically the first 25 games of the WNBA regular season. Maybe even the first 30 games if you go and look at the record. But with Asia Wilson and the steady leadership of Becky Hammon, as hard-nosed a coach as she is, here we are, another WNBA season in the books. And who knows, it might be the last WNBA season for a little while. Half kidding, with all the labor strife that league is about to be embroiled in. And a very busy offseason when you've got an expansion draft and players being dispersed. I don't think we could say enough about just how amazing this Las Vegas Aces organization is to capture its third title in 4 years. And I get it. There's not as many teams in the WNBA as there is in the NFL, as there is in the NHL, as there is in Major League Baseball. I appreciate the fact that some people are going to come at me and say it's unfair to label the Las Vegas Aces as the most successful organization in all of professional sports. But to still be able to win a title in this era of the WNBA, where now there is more parity, where it isn't just one team, that is dominating every season, where there is so much more talent in women's basketball. I like I said, I thought it was necessary to give them some time here at the end of the show today and wax poetic about what they've done, because it certainly deserves to be celebrated. So congratulations to Becky Hammon, Asia Wilson, the rest of that Las Vegas Aces team, and Mark Davis as the owner of the franchise. And that's going to wrap it up for us on this Monday edition of the show. Thanks to Bill Bender, Brian Twining, you for watching. We'll see you all back here on Tuesday for another edition of Sports Wrap. Have a great day.